Hey guys, this is Mrs. Tran-Bloom. Alright, so we are starting 6.2 trigonometric functions, the unit circle approach. So before we start this awesome looking chart and a circle here, let's define what the unit circle is. The unit circle is, a circle with the radius of 1 unit. Now let's talk about this. This is so important that it has its own name, right? A circle with the radius of 1 unit. I mean, think about this. We're calling it the unit circle. So, I mean, anytime you put the something, the in front of an item, it's like so special. It's kind of giving its own name. Okay. So let's talk about the unit circle, right? A circle with the radius of 1 unit. What is it about? So here's an awesome looking circle. I'm just going to draw a ray from the center here. And let's call this point x comma y. We don't know where that is. Okay, we're just going to call it x comma y. If that's a point on the circle, then I can definitely make a 90-degree on with the x-axis being the other way. Okay, so here's a 90-degree triangle. So now I have a triangle of 90 degrees. If this point is x comma y, then this distance right here is an x distance. And this distance right here, it's a y distance. We don't know how far that is. But one thing we do know for sure is because this is called the unit circle, we know that this is the radius, and the radius is 1. Okay, that's all we know right now. So let's call this angle, the central angle, this angle right here, let's call it theta. So we're going to go put theta through all of this right here. So all 6 trig functions, we're going to put theta with it. Sine by itself really means nothing. Cosine by itself really means nothing. It has to have an angle next to it. Okay, since the angle is unknown, we're going to call it theta. So sine of theta, we're going to abbreviate that to sin of theta, but we really don't say sin. We say sine of theta. So we're going to abbreviate to sin of theta. As you remember, it's opposite over hypotenuse. Well, opposite of this triangle is y. Hypotenuse is 1. So on the unit circle, so let's talk about this. On the unit circle, sine of the central angle is the same as the y coordinate. Cosine abbreviation, we're going to call it COS of theta equals. And cosine equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. And adjacent of this center angle is x. Hypotenuse is the radius of 1. We're going to reduce that to x. So sine on the unit circle is the same as the y coordinate, and x, is the same as your cosine on the unit circle. Tangent, remember SOHCAHTOA, so it's going to be opposite over adjacent, which is going to be opposite is going to be y, adjacent is x. Okay, oops, I just wrote x. It's supposed to be y over x. So y over x. Now cosecant, oh, by the way, abbreviation of tangent is TAN of theta, okay? Cosecant abbreviation is CSC. Okay, so anytime you see CSC is actually pronounced cosecant. So cosecant of theta is going to be the reciprocal of sine of theta. And if I have sine, it's y over 1, then cosecant is 1 over y. Secant abbreviation is going to be SEC of theta. Secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine of theta. Well, cosine is x over 1, so secant is going to be 1 over x. So whatever cosine is, we're just going to flip it. Cotangent abbreviation is COT of theta, which is actually a couple of things. It's going to be the reciprocal function of tangent. Okay. Well, if tangent is opposite over adjacent, cotangent is going to be adjacent over opposite, or x over y. Okay. So whatever tangent is, we're just going to take it and take its reciprocal, and that's what we get for cotangent. Now, these 6 trig functions are so important. You have to know it. And eventually, by the end of 6.2, you need to know it really well and also really fast. Okay? We're going to go to example 1. Example 1, I want to make sure it's on the screen. Example 1 says that some point called P has the coordinates of x comma y. It's on the unit circle. Okay, so now let's talk about it's on the unit circle. So we know the radius is, it's 1. Okay, so if it says it's on the unit circle, we know right away the radius is 1 unit. That's what it means. Find the exact values of 6 trigonometric functions. So that means anytime you see the word find the exact value, you are not allowed to use a calculator. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, you can do this multiple ways. But the first one I'm going to write down is I'm going to write down all my 6 trig functions. Sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta, cosecant of theta, secant of theta, and cotangent of theta. Okay, so these are the 6 trig functions that I'm supposed to find the solutions for. So because it's on the unit circle, we're going to talk about what it means to be on the unit circle. We just did a chart on the previous page that said, hey, sine of an angle on the unit circle is exactly the same as y. And cosine of an angle on the unit circle is the same as x. Well, I have y and I have x, so right now I'm just going to write that in. Sine of theta equals y, so y is going to be rad 3 over 2. Cosine is going to be the same as x, so therefore I'm going to have negative 1 over 2. Tangent, we just did it on the previous page. Tangent we know is y divided by x. Y is going to be rad 3 over 2 divided by negative 1 over 2 because that's what x is. When you divide, you're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So rad 3 over 2 times a negative 2 over 1. As you can tell, these will cancel out. So now I'm going to end up with a negative rad 3. So that's what I'm going to get for tangent, a negative rad 3. Cosecant. Cosecant of theta, as you remember, is going to be the reciprocal of sine. Well, if I know sine, it's up here, rad 3 over 2. The reciprocal is, I'm just going to flip it, 2 over rad 3. But because I can't really have a radical in the bottom, you know that you need to rationalize this, okay, by multiplying top and bottom by radical 3. So therefore, my cosecant answer is going to be 2 times rad 3 all over 3. And that's what I'm going to write for my box here. The next one I have is secant. Secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine. Okay. So your reciprocal of cosine. Well, I know cosine from above is negative 1 over 2. So if I'm going to take the reciprocal, it's negative 2 over 1, which is really reduced down to negative 2. The sign matters, okay? So there's a negative, a positive. Now let's talk about this. In trigonometric, there's no partial credit for, quote unquote, forgetting your negative. If you forget your negative in trig, then you are in a whole different quadrant. That means you're completely wrong. So you can't just now say, I forgot it, or I know what I was doing, I just forget to write down the negative sign. You can't do that, okay? It's in algebra first semester, algebra stuff, we kind of gave you partial credit if you didn't have a negative sign because it wasn't as important. It's important, but not as much as trig. So in trig, forgetting the minus sign, the whole credit, the whole point's gone. All right, last piece is going to be your cotangent of theta. Cotangent of theta is going to be 1 over tangent of theta. And I already have my answer for tangent of theta. Tangent of theta is negative, that is completely wrong. You can't have a negative 3 inside. So can you please erase that and make sure that's just a negative outside? I think I write the answer correctly. I wrote the answer correctly in my box, but somehow I just have an extra negative inside. All right, so cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So I'm going to take my tangent, which is that, and I'm going to flip it. Now, if I flip it, I'm going to end up with a 1 over negative rad 3, which is the same thing as negative 1 over positive rad 3, by the way. So I need to rationalize my denominator. So multiply this by rad 3, and I'm going to end up with negative rad 3 over 3. And that's my final answer for cotangent of theta. So negative rad 3 all over 3. Okay? So that's what happens when you have a point on the unit circle. So on the unit circle, I just have to follow the rules and then get all my 6 trig functions that way. Okay? Now the next one, the next 4, is going to be somewhat important because these are special angles. Okay? I'm going to plot this point really quickly. If I plot this point, here's my x and y axes, and if I plot this point, I'm going to have, hey, it's 1 comma 0. So here's 1 and saying on x-axis, so this is 1 comma 0. This is called a quadrant angle, right? A quadrant angle is meaning that it doesn't belong in any of these 4 quads. It's on the x-axis or y-axis. So if you look at this, I already know what x is and I already know what y is. Okay, so to find my 6 trig functions, I'm just gonna write my box here. Sine of theta equals cosine of theta equals tangent of theta equals cotangent of theta equals cosecant of theta equals and secant of theta equals. Let's box it up. This is where I'm going to write my final answer, so it's going to be neat, okay? And as you know, sine of theta is the same as y. In this case, because it's on the unit circle, your y, my radius is 1, so immediately I know that it's just going to be 0 for sine of theta. Cosine of theta, as you know, is the same as x on the unit circle. So on the unit circle, for this particular point, my x is 1, so cosine of theta is 1. Tangent of theta is y divided by x. Well, let's talk about this piece. Y is 0, x is 1, so therefore tangent is going to be 0. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So if it's the reciprocal, it's x divided by y. X is 1, y is 0, or you can just take these two right here and take its reciprocal. Because the denominator is 0, this is going to be undefined. Okay, so now you have to know that the circle with the line through it stands for no solution to undefined. Cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of sine. So we're going to go 1 over sine, or 1 over y. Well, here's 1, and y is 0. So cosecant, it's another value that's also undefined. Secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine, and cosine is x, so we know if I were to take the reciprocal, it's 1 over x. So therefore, I'm going to write 1 over, x happens to be 1, and that reduces down to 1. So these are the solutions, okay, of my 6 trig functions on this particular point. Now, if you look at this, if I were to draw a circle, this point is also called the 0 degree or 360 degrees, okay, or pi, 0 pi, or 2 pi. So if I want to know what theta is the same as 0 degrees or 360 degrees. Or if I want to talk about radiant, then it's 0 pi radiant and then 2 pi radiant. Oops, I meant to do 360 degrees. Okay. So if we're talking about degrees, then you need this little symbol right here above the bubbles to represent degrees. And if we're talking about radiant, which can be, if there are no bubbles, then your book, just by default, we're going to say that the unit of measurement is radians, okay? So let's go on to the next one. The next one is I'm going to have a point at 0, comma 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to plot it out. When x is 0, y is 1, so here's that dot. Okay, so this is 0, comma 1. Well, here's a circle. As you know, the radius is still 1 unit. So we're going to write down all of our 6 trig functions: sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta, let's do cosecant of theta, secant of theta, and cotangent of theta. Okay, box this up. Now sine of theta by now, you know, is the same as which coordinate? The x coordinate or the y coordinate? Hopefully you're saying the y. So if it's the same as the y coordinate, then sine of theta is 1. Cosine of theta is the same as which coordinate? Hopefully you're mumbling x. So if that's the case, cosine of that is going to be 0. Tangent is what over what? Y over x or x over y? Hopefully you're saying that is y over x. Okay. So y is going to be 1. X is 0. And what's happening here? What's happening at tangent at this particular point? Is going to be, it does not exist or undefined. Cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of sine or cosine? Cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of sine. Okay, so that's going to be 1 over sine of theta, which is really 1 over y. Well, your y is 1, so 1 over 1, which is really ending up to be 1. Secant of theta is going to be the reciprocal of cosine, which is 1 over x. And x happens to be 0, so 1 over 0. So at cosecant at this particular angle, and this angle is, if you think about it, if I'm starting from here, okay, and I'm going this way, that's 1 full quadrant. So this is really 90 degrees. And 90 degrees in radians is going to be pi over 2 radians, okay? So this is what theta is. So 1 over 0, I'm sorry, is undefined. Okay. So secant at 90 degrees is undefined. Cotangent at 90 degrees is going to be the reciprocal of tangent, which is going to be x divided by y. X is 0. Y is going to be 1. 0 divided by 1 is always 0. So cotangent at 90 degrees is 0. Or cotangent at this particular point, it's also 0. Okay. I'm going to do one last one with you, either D or E, but not both. Okay? And then what your job is, you're going to do the other one on your own. So let's see which one I would like to do with you. Let's do E, and then this one is going to be on your own. Okay. So E, the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, plot it out. Okay. Anytime that you're doing something that you're not sure of, draw a graph, sketch a picture, something that helps you. When x is 0, y is -1. So here's 0, -1. Just plot the dot. Okay. And I'm going to write down my 6 trig functions here. Sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta, cotangent of theta, cosecant of theta, and secant of theta. Okay, box this up. Alright, sine is the same as y. Y happens to be -1, so my sine is -1. Oh, let's talk about what angle this is. Theta is, if we're starting from here, first quadrant, that's 90 degrees. Second quadrant, that's 180. We're now at third quadrant, so this is actually 270 degrees. Okay? 270 degrees is the same as 3 pi over 2 radians. Okay, so this is what it is. So cosine of this particular point, okay, cosine of an angle, and this angle makes up 270 degrees, is going to be x, and x happens to be 0. Tangent, again, is y over x. And again, just write these letters down. Hopefully by the end of today's notes, you're going to have it all memorized, and then second semester will be a success. Okay, so tangent is y over x. Your y is going to be -1 over 0, which is, you have a 0 in the denominator, so that's going to give me an undefined value. Okay, so tangent of 270 degrees does not exist. Cotangent is x over y. X happens to be 0. Y happens to be -1. 0 divided by anything is 0. Cosecant is going to be the reciprocal of, this is where you need to help me out. Is it the reciprocal of sine, or is it the reciprocal of cosine? I hope you set the reciprocal of sine. Okay, so that means I'm going to do 1 over y. Well, y is negative 1, so 1 over negative 1 is going to be negative 1, right? I'm going to circle that because it's kind of squeezed in there. Secant is going to be 1 over cosine, and that means 1 over x. That means 1 over, oops, x is 0. So what's happening? It's secant of 270 degrees. It does not exist, okay? All right, so this is, I just got done with E. Now you're doing this on your own. Okay, make sure you complete it all. And so then tomorrow ask me what the correct answers are. Now before we wrap up, I would like for us to fill out this chart. Now I'm not going to fill out the entire chart or table. I'm going to help you with a couple of these, and then whatever I didn't help you, you need to do it on your own. All right. So first, it's asking for radians, and so 0 degree is the same as 0 radian or 2 pi radians. 90 degrees is the same as pi over 2 radians. I'm gonna leave 180 for you to figure that out, but 270 is the same as 3 pi over 2 radians. Okay. So this one right here, anything that I'm leaving blank, you need to fill that in on your own. All right, so 0 degrees and 360 degrees is usually the same answer, okay? We're starting the same place and we're ending the same place. It's really location. Sine, we did it earlier. Okay, so let's go back to the point that we completed. Okay, so check out this point. Notice how this is 0, 360. So this chart is really going to refer back to your B, C, D, and E, okay? So if we're looking at this chart and we said, hey, what is sine of 0 degrees or 360 degrees? We're going to say sine is at 0. Cosine of 0 degrees or cosine of 360 is going to be 1. I'm going to ask you to fill out tangent on your own, but I'm going to give you cotangent of 0 degree is going to be undefined. Secant, I'm going to give it to you. Secant of 0 degrees or 360 degrees is going to be 1. Okay, and your job is to fill out cosecant. So right now you have 1 blank space, 2 and 3 so far. Okay. Sine of 90 degrees, I'm going to let you fill those 2 blank spaces out, but I'm going to give you tangent. Tangent is undefined. Cotangent of 90 degrees is going to be 0. Secant of 90 degrees is going to be undefined. Cosecant of 90 degrees is going to be 1. So right now you got these 2 blank spaces to fill out. Sine of 180 degrees is going to be 0. I'm going to leave cosine for you to fill out. I'm going to fill out tangent for you. Tangent is also 0. Cotangent of 180 degrees is going to be undefined. Secant, I'm going to leave that blank for you to fill out. But cosecant of 180 degrees is going to be undefined as well. So far, for each angle here, I'm leaving 2 blank spaces for you to fill out. Now, the last angle, which is 270 degrees or 3 pi over 2, I'm actually going to say 3 pi over 2. Sine of 3 pi over 2 is going to be negative 1. Cosine of 3 pi over 2 is going to be 0. Tangent of 3 pi over 2 is going to be undefined. I'm going to leave this blank for you to fill out. Secant of 3 pi over 2 is going to be undefined. And I'm also going to leave this blank for you to fill out. So right now, let's see, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? 9 blank spaces for you to fill out. And when I stamp these notes tomorrow, your previous letter D and these 9 blank spaces, they all need to be perfect. This is the end of the notes, and have a great day.